Hello to all of you small carriers and owner operators out there. Welcome back to our summit dedicated specifically for you. Today, we're going to focus our chat on showcasing how you can actually improve your decision making and your overall growth strategies using technologies available today. And I have a really great guest with us here to lend a hand in this discussion. Discussion with me today is Raj Subbiah, head of product over at Uber Freight. Raj, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Grace.
Yeah, I think this is a really great opportunity for, of course, someone with your expertise, someone who's come into this industry kind of with that tech background and has experience blending some of our, let's say, outdated strategies when it comes to technology and bringing us into this new generation of tech that's, I think, honestly, even through Uber Freight size, is focused on the owner operator and making their decision making much easier. So let's talk about technology as a whole. For you, what are the most important technology tools for small carriers and owner operators out there today that they should be looking at investing in order to improve their overall business operations?
I think that's a great question, Grace. First off, let me start by saying this: small owner operators are the lifeline of the freight business. I think in the U.S. and as you've heard called out, we did focus a lot. We are focusing a lot on making their lives a lot better. To answer your question, I'd say I think about the tools in three different buckets. One is tools that can help them with increase their demand, meaning the book of business. These include things like load boards or digital brokerages, tools that can help with market insights so that, the owner operator can bolster their confidence on what the market rates are. If you're moving a local load, it may not be super helpful because you may be a better expert at that. But if you are doing long hauls, 1,000 miles plus, knowing which areas has higher demand than supply is going to be extremely useful. So that's one bucket. The next bucket is about controlling costs, and the last bucket is about operations. So I'll dig into each of these a little bit. So, obviously I come from Uber Freight, where we do offer a product where if you download the product, and then you have access to thousands of loads every single day. We're not the only ones out there. There are quite a few of these. I think that's just table stakes for any owner operator to have these apps installed on their phone and then do that. Market insights that we talked about. There are quite a couple of folks offering this service, including FreightWaves Sonar. Being able to have access to that product and being able to kind of like zone in on which areas you need to go to or what the market price is in each of these local markets makes a huge difference in terms of the end of the day, in terms of getting your maximum dollars per mile or per hour. And then the other piece I want to say is, is often missed is about scorecarding. If you're an owner operator, you're providing a service, and then understanding how good your service is super important. Now, I can't think of a specific product that looks at scorecards across all of the different brokers or shippers they provide service to, but each product, for example, even we actually offer scorecarding capability within our app. So being able to staying on top of that, ensuring that the service that they're providing to the broker or the service is really, really important. Now, in terms of controlling costs, there are a couple of pieces that I would say, just kind of stand out. Fuel cards. That's one of the largest largest operating expense for any owner operator out there. Keeping an eye on fuel costs and then being able to kind of use a card where they have pre-negotiated rates with the large fuel stations and small fuel stations, and knowing how much you can actually bring it down. Some of them even offer 50 cents to 80 cents a gallon in savings. Being able to kind of keep an eye on that and being able to use a product like that to kind of fuel, to increase your profit margin is a huge deal. And the other piece I'd talk about are leases. There are a lot of products out there today that offer the ability to negotiate better lease for the equipment they actually have than they can do on their own. It's about collective bargaining. So being part of that network and then being able to negotiate a better deal for the equipment you use is a huge deal. And the last bucket I'll talk about is operations. Again, I won't necessarily name names here, but I would say, some of the owner operators who've scaled from 2 trucks to 10 trucks have found some value in going and getting a dispatch service for them. This is so that, the owner of the business can spend their time doing other things than kind of sitting down and then figuring out what the best loads are to move. There are quite a few technology ones. There are quite a few where, that work is being outsourced to maybe a lower cost area. And that can do that about, for 2 to 3% of your net is what these services cost. So that's something they definitely take a look at. And the last part, probably one of the most important pieces, is making sure that the money that it earned is actually accurately coming into the bank account. So being able to kind of enlist into an invoicing or an accounts receivable service, some of it, combine that with factoring services, although I don't think it's necessary to have that, but invoicing or account receivable services, and there are quite a few of these services out there, both technology-based and otherwise, that if I were an owner operator, I would definitely enlist for.
I mean, you just brought up so many really great points in here. I want to try to touch on some of the big ones. I think one that you probably have a lot of at least talent and work in and expertise in is the decision making aspect. And it's interesting because my past work with carriers, one of the things that used to just really make me laugh is a lot of times they'll call in and say, well, what do you got? Like, what's the best paying load out there, regardless of what lane it is, regardless of what state it's of origin it's in or where it's going. It was just a lot of times following the dollar. How do tech companies work in, especially with carrier data and the data that you're receiving from your shippers on loads, to help carriers eliminate those extra decisions that are or loads available to pick the loads that are going to be best for their business, that will ultimately, like almost everything you went into, could control costs and even your scorecarding abilities overall.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's something that we actually spent a ton of time thinking about because we are building products for, for the folks we're talking to right now. So I'd say two things, right? One is when you think about your business, I would think about it in two different ways. One is being able to pay for your recurring costs, meaning your fixed costs. These are things like being able to pay for your trailer, being able to pay for your tractor, being able to pay for some facility that so maybe a warehousing facility or a parking lot that's recurring, and that you have to make the payment for that month no matter what. And then the other piece is, how do you maximize your dollar value for the amount of miles driven and the amount of time spent as well, not just for you, but also for your employees. So I definitely try to separate the thinking into those two different buckets. I love, if you talk to my team, I think you'll hear that I love a portfolio approach, meaning you have a little bit of both in each segment, and then you make progress on both of those things. So, for example, fixed costs, what you need is a steady stream of revenue, consistent revenue that comes every week or every month or time and again. And even if the market tanks, you have something to lean back on to make sure that your payments for your assets are keeping. A lot of some of the brokers, especially the digital ones, offer things like dedicated capacity or committed capacity. Even at Uber Freight, we have a program called committed capacity. This is where if you are a well-performing carrier, you can go onto our platform and you could basically say, hey, I want to move loads on certain days of the week, and here are the lanes I want to move these loads on, and here's how much I love to get paid for those things. If it works for us, we'd actually engage with you on that, and then we make a commitment to send you consistent loads on those lanes, so you get that consistent revenue. And then for the other, maximizing dollar earned per mile or dollar earned per hour, you kind of play the spot loads piece. I think this is where a ton of our carriers, the owner-operated carriers, spend a lot of their time trying to figure out which loads to move or whatnot. And the problem is now they have 6 different apps on their phone and, tens of thousands of loads for them to kind of go through it. Almost every single time, like we kind of talk with someone at a rest stop, they're looking at their app, trying to figure out what loads. There are a lot of these products, especially the digital brokerage products, offer the capability to personalize, meaning like you get to set up how these load boards reach out to you. So things like, if you go in, you should be able to kind of set a filter and then save that filter so that any load that matches that filter gets directly into your inbox. Or if you set up push notifications, you do push notification. Or if you want more frequent hits, set up a text communication. And a lot of these load boards can actually go and do that for you. And the other piece is what you do if you have a favorite platform. Let's just say, for the case of this conversation, let's just say it's Blue Freight. If you have a favorite platform, go through it and then use the product and set up the product in a way where you actually get these inputs on a daily basis. Things like bookmarking a load, or even just pick up the phone and call whichever AM you're talking to, and then ask them how to kind of set this up, and they'll be more than happy to kind of work you through that. And the last piece of that is if you are doing both a trailer, if you're doing live loads, this is where you actually go to a facility, you get your trailer loaded up, and then you go to a facility again, and then you have them unload it. You're spending valuable time at the facilities. Now, this also may be a hit or a miss because the facility could be a great facility at this, very efficient, or slightly slower. So think about one, facility ratings. In our app, we actually produce the ratings of the facility right along with the load. So you have an idea, okay, this facility will make me wait an extra 2 hours. And while I earn detention, I might lose out on other potential loads. Or think about drop loads. It's one of the most efficient ways you can actually go engage with the facility. And then you reduce the amount of time you need to be spending at the facility and instead moving more loads.
It's all incredible, even like down to the bookmarks aspect, like thinking of even like social media sites and how you can do such the same things, right? And that's what's really cool is we're bringing like the technology that we use in our phones every single day, finally to the phones or the different whatever desktop, etc. that these carriers are using. And one part too that I want to touch on, because I think this is very important to the overall health of the business. And yes, is becoming more attainable for not just providers like yourself, even shippers, is the scorecarding aspect. In a time like this, right, where shippers, all they care about is compliance, right? The rates are right where they need them, but with that needs to be the compliant carriers to back those rates up. And those scorecards are going to tell them who's doing that. Can you tell us how carriers can maybe invest a little bit more in that scorecard and what positives can come out of that, even off the head, like days to pay, et cetera?
I think that's a great question and often a very overlooked piece of doing business in the freight space. So two things. One is if you're working directly with shippers, they usually have a scorecard on their end. Shippers usually think about optimizing for one of two things, either price, so actually usually both price and the kind of service they actually get. It's usually, if it's a scorecard, there's usually about pickup, drop off, and also like, how consistent you are. That's pretty much the underlying reasons for having a scorecard. Unfortunately, because a lot of the brokerage loads get split up between, if you're a carrier working with 10 or 15 brokers, there's no easy way to track your performance across all of them. However, the digital ones, I would say, offer that in a very easy way. Meaning, if you have a favorite platform, ensure you have access to the scorecards within the app. And so, because not only does it tell you how good of a service you're providing the broker, it will also make you eligible for other kinds of services. For example, if you're a really well-performing carrier on a Uber Freight app, would we actually allow you to kind of be eligible for the committed capacity program that I just talked about? On very similar notes, we're thinking about bringing in that level of constraints for doing a drop program. So these are the kinds of things that I think in terms of value, you get out of it. Most of the digital brokerages usually have some sort of a visible scorecarding mechanism. It's usually, if there's a tab on your app, it's usually in the carrier tab, or it's in the more section. If you go scroll through that, you should be able to track your performance with that brokerage. If they don't have that, I would say it's probably a good time for you to pick a favorite brokerage and then kind of see if they actually invested in that.
And it's really great too to hear that you guys have created even your own ecosystem, a incentive to keep an eye on that scorecard. And You're absolutely right. I mean, I think for carriers out there too, the better that you do on those scorecards, the more compliant that you can be with the shippers or the providers that you're working with. You're going to be able to negotiate better rates. You'll be able to negotiate better terms. Even we could go on for days into back office software as well. But I think these are some really great areas that we just hit that carriers can leave here today and really tackle within their business as well. Thank you, Raj, so much for being a part of our summit today and this wonderful advice and then honestly an insight into the knowledge behind the technology as well is really incredible. Appreciate your time and excited to have you on in future events as well.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure.